Right, people, we're back. Victory and Vices podcast. Me, Rory Spooner, James Veck, and Reese Henley. And as you can see, we've got a very special guest, Sav Mondo. Sav, thank you for coming on. Very much appreciated. Again, one we've been looking forward to for a while. We recently had Kendall Rowan on. Shout out to Kendall for coming on, and now yourself as well. We have a million different things we could discuss, talk about in terms of football, and obviously you being a Newcastle fan and various other things. But probably a very good place to start is, how are you? You know, with everything that's going on, how have you been keeping?
Yeah, I've been just mulling along normally, really. I mean, I've been staying at home a little bit more often, but I've been at work, so it's just normal for me.
Yeah, same. I think we're all in the same boat. Yeah, well, the new normal for all of us, shall we say? Yeah, whatever that is. But we are obviously, you know, really passionate about what we do on YouTube, and we're always interested to discuss YouTube with people that come on, like how they got started, where it's developing to, things like that. Because your Twitter following is massive. Like, I looked at it earlier on, and you got like what, 12,000 followers almost?
Yeah, I think it's just under 12,000.
Yeah, just under 12. So how did the YouTube sort of adventure start for you? Where did that all begin?
Do you know what? When I joined Twitter, I didn't join to be on YouTube. Like, I'm not very confident in real life, so I wasn't even looking to go on. And when I started on Twitter, a rumor started circulating because I was talking about football, that I was secretly a man in real life and posing behind photos of a woman just to get likes and followers. And there was a lot of really bitter people out there just moaning, and it was actually making me really paranoid. And I was like, I don't know why. I'd pose for a selfie, a bit of paper with like not a fake account on, and they'd go, oh well, you could have photoshopped that on that bit of paper. So eventually it got to a point where Steve Rafe contacted me. And he said, would you like to come on my podcast? And I felt so much immense pressure through that, because that's not something that's usually would have been in my comfort zone before. And I ummed and ahed about it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to go on, because otherwise all these people that are saying that I'm secretly a guy are going to go, well, she won't go on a podcast, so she obviously is secretly a man. And I don't know, it all got a bit pathetic. But anyway, I ended up sinking about 3 double vodkas and going on Steve's show. And from that, I think maybe because I was a bit half drunk and saying a few stupid things, I think he then started Ladies' Night on a Monday, which I do with Kendall. So yeah, it just sort of spiraled from there. But I never set out to do it.
That's a mad story that that Twitter thought you were a man and you were catfishing everyone, and all those angry guys were like, well, prove it. You got to prove it now.
Yeah.
Fair play to you. So shout out to Steve as well, because obviously he came on the other day. So the YouTube aspirations, then, obviously you didn't really have any initially to begin with, but you know, it's developed quite nicely for you. For lads like ourselves that maybe don't have as many Twitter followers, what is the key to getting so many Twitter followers? Any advice?
I don't know. I just talk rubbish all day. I think it's probably, I don't know, I'm just on there all the time. I comment on a lot of things. I don't know really what it is. I don't know how so many people find me interesting. They probably don't. They probably just follow me thinking, what an idiot. But but no, I don't know. I just sort of started. I did sort of hit the ground running when I joined Twitter, and I didn't expect it. And for a while, I found it really overwhelming, because it was like meeting all these people that I didn't know, and you don't know who's nice and who's not, and you have to kind of decipher your little group out within Twitter. And, you know, have your little circle, and it takes a long time to sort that out, especially when you gain following quite quickly. And I think, you know, I've been on Twitter a year next month, and it's settled down. You know, I know who I sort of get on with and who isn't that keen on me, and that's fine. You know, we don't have to talk. It's really weird. People just don't like you for no reason. Like people I haven't even spoken to, they just get a disliking, but it is what it is. And I just keep chatting rubbish. That's all I do on there.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting you mentioned about the YouTube and Twitter experience, right? Because as guys, I know from personal experience, I've had people throw a few jabs at me, and I'm sure the lads are the same, right? But they don't seem to come for us the way they do female YouTubers. And I've noticed now there's a trend amongst, I think it's just society in general. When you look at especially black football players now, they're constantly subject to being targeted. And then female YouTubers, they're constantly subject to being targeted. And I don't know if it's maybe the times that we're living in, but there's just an oddness about it all. Like, I was looking at Kendall the other day on her Twitter, and she's another one. She gets an awful lot of abuse just for being the person that she is. And then I think there's a few girls, I forget the name of the channel, like the She Devils, I believe, the Manchester United channel. They get a ton of abuse off United fans, which is crazy, right? Because it's like, if you don't like it, don't watch it. How much of that have you encountered, obviously, on YouTube with yourself so far?
I've had quite a lot of it. And when I very first started doing the YouTube, I had a select group on Twitter that was screenshotting my face in unattractive positions, and then throwing it out there and going, oh, look, she's not really she's not attractive at all. She's really ugly. And I'm like, well, do you know what? I've pulled a lot of funny faces for photos. It doesn't bother me. But it's just like, they try and get you on the paranoia. And I saw today, actually, you talking about Kendall and her abuse. There was one account that I was looking at this afternoon. It was completely sort of dedicated to hating on me and Kendall. And I saw myself being called a Poundland wag, which I don't really know what was about. But yeah, I have had quite a lot of it, but I do try and block those accounts. I know there's a few people on there that have said to me, that have come at me and said, oh, why have you blocked this account? They're saying they've never actually spoken to you. But I do watch who people speak to that do troll me, and I do just block it because I don't want to see it, because I value my mental health, and I don't want it to be affected by what some stranger on the internet thinks of me.
Yeah, isn't it weird how they almost get their validation from abusing someone else? It's strange. Like, we've had a little bit of it, right? But as three lads, people generally don't really come for us that much, and if they do, it's maybe one guy. But I just noticed a trend on female YouTubers where people are just ganging up now to bash them, and it's bizarre. Like, it is really strange. But in terms of the YouTube journey, like, and the Twitter journey, clearly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. But as aspirations go, what do you think this could maybe lead to for you moving forward? Do you think it'll lead to maybe more media opportunities? Just the thing with Steve now is permanent as well, is that right?
As far as I know, the thing with Steve is permanent. I do know that when things go back to normal a bit more, he will be dropping a few shows. Yeah. Whether or not that will change around as to who's, presenting them or what, I don't know. I haven't discussed any of that with him. I'm hoping to very soon start my own YouTube channel. Yeah. I've got all the logos and things sorted out for it. I've just got to find the time to sit down and actually record something worth watching. It's not going to be all football, because sometimes, especially being a Newcastle fan, the football is a bit depressing, and I just don't want to be sat there with a channel of me just whinging about Steve Bruce sort of, 24/7. So it's going to have different elements to it. I just want it to be something a little bit different from that was what is already out there and what people are doing, because, if you've seen one, you've seen sometimes all of them, and I just wanted to offer something a little bit different. So yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, you say about media opportunities. I was on Capital Radio the other week talking about me overbuying on chocolate mousse due to Twitter. So, the options are endless.
Yeah, clearly. Newcastle is obviously the subject that'll be close to your heart, and our resident Geordie Reese is here, because he's desperate to talk all things Newcastle, good, bad, and ugly. And obviously, me and Becky will give our 10 cents as well. Kick us off, Reese, for Newcastle. Where do we even begin with this shambles?
Yeah, look, Sam, I just I've got to wonder. I mean, obviously, from your accent there, I'm just wondering how your sort of love, if we want to call it that, of Newcastle really started. I mean, I'm similar to yourself. I'm from Wales, and I support Newcastle, and you tend to find that a lot of Newcastle fans actually are from the area, and they're brought up with it in their family. But I wasn't sure about yourself.
Yeah, no, it's nothing to do with that. It was when I was about 12, I developed a massive crush on Alan Shearer, and I decided that me and him were going to get married. Like, I stopped playing with my Barbies over it. I was serious, I was ready to grow up. And yeah, I just absolutely loved him. And it was at that time, like Euro 96. Then he went to Newcastle, and that was how it started. I just started supporting Newcastle, and I've sort of stayed there, even though it's absolutely miserable. And I could go and support a team that's, a delight to support. Perhaps I just like the misery of it now. I don't know. It's just got. I've just stayed since he's gone.
Yeah, it's Newcastle fans just are addicted to pain, to be honest. And unfortunately, over the last, I haven't been supporting them quite as long as you have, but certainly over the last 15, 16, 17 years I've been supporting them, there's been far more pain than there's been anything else. Where do you stand at the moment? I mean, a lot of Newcastle fans are saying, when the fans are allowed back in, they'll rush back for as many people that are allowed, they'll go back. And would you personally go to the games and attend yourself, or would you stay away?
Obviously, it's quite a big journey for me. So I think when fans are allowed back in, I'm going to be a little bit cautious if I haven't had my jab or anything. I don't know if you can go in if you haven't had a jab. I don't know what the ruling is on that now.
Well, I don't know myself. I mean, they change it almost on a monthly basis, don't they?
Yeah.
All sorts of things being petitioned through Parliament and all sorts. But, you know, we have to imagine all things will be equal. And you know, I think the last day of the season, this season, is the day that we can go back into stadiums. But to assume that most of the population will be vaccinated by September, I guess that, you know, that would say that, you know, the vaccinations will be somewhat irrelevant to fans attending the games, especially when you consider the age range of the fans as well. But I mean, obviously, you said it's a long journey for yourself. I mean, I'm not sure myself that those who are living around the ground and in the vicinity will want to go back. I think we discussed this, lads, on a podcast going back a couple of years now, about whether fans of these clubs in these situations should attend the games and should perhaps give these regimes the money, and versus the you know, the detriment to the club of obviously not having those fans in the stadium. I know where I stand on it, and that's where, you know, I've stayed away since 2016, and I wouldn't go back either until things, you know, take a, you know, massive improvement. But I don't know where you would stand with it, Sav, or what you would encourage people to believe.
I think it's everyone's personal option. You know, I don't know if I'd encourage people. The thing that I see is no matter how many people have turned their backs and said, right, well, I'm not going, there's still people turning up. So, you know, it doesn't seem to have affected anything. I don't know. I get both sides. I completely do. I'm sort of sat on the fence. I would go back to games, and I want to, just because I like going, but I don't think there's any. I do agree also with the people who have stayed away. It's been in a really miserable situation for such a long time now, and it is frustrating. And at the moment, you know, I think, especially with Steve Bruce in charge, I dread when fans go back, and if he's still there, because I feel a bit sorry for him, because I'm not sure he knows to the extent of what the anger is that's going on surrounding him, and I probably wouldn't want to be there for that. No, definitely not.
Yeah, my inkling is that when the fans are allowed to go back, they will sell out, no matter how many fans are allowed in, and pretty much no matter what division they're in as well. Because of the fact they've, you know, been starved for so long with the pandemic. But my fear is that it'll be such a feel-good atmosphere going back to the stadium, and within 10 minutes Newcastle will be playing dire football, and the fans will be booing, and the place will be just toxic again. And it just seems like a circular system, and it always comes back to the fans just being miserable and things. I just don't know where they go from this now.
Yeah. The thing is, right, Reece, you said you think they'll sell out regardless, which I think is true, because I'm sure there's a very large percentage of Newcastle fans like yourself, with good reason, don't want to go and watch the team play. But they've got such a big fan base, I think a huge percentage can say no, but there's still so many diehard Newcastle fans that have the opposite opinion that are still going to go anyway. And you know, Sav, you mentioned with Steve Bruce whether he'll be there when it's time to go back. Obviously, we watched the United game the other day, and it was photos after the game of him smiling a full time with Solskjaer. You know, you just think he just doesn't do anything good for himself, does he? You know, you've lost. Was it 3-1 or 4-1 in the end that they lost to come to the scoreline, and he's smiling the final whistle. And what are they, 3 points now, clear of Fulham, and Fulham are playing well. Fulham are picking up points, and I think if you do drop into that 18th spot, I think that could be curtains then, because there's a difference between being close to the relegation zone and then actually being in it, isn't it? Although it's only 3 points, but I think over the next couple of fixtures, if you drop into that relegation zone, I actually believe he'll be gone.
Yeah, well,
I think
no, go ahead.
It's just, the frustration of it is that Steve Bruce doesn't seem to see this as a situation that, well, it doesn't look like it, that he's worried about. And he sort of tries to downplay it. He'll, you know, blame the fans, blame the players, blame everyone other than him, who, you know, he's in charge. There should be more urgency. And we're still seeing bouts of the players going out there just looking like they can't be bothered. And that's what's so frustrating. Him laughing at the end of the Man United game, that about sums it up for me, because that's just how he just doesn't care. He's just, you know, we've just been pelted and lost, and he's there having a laugh. And don't get me wrong, he's obviously got friends within the footballing world, but he must know how to play the media now. He's been in it long enough, and that's not the time to be having a laugh. You know, go and do it somewhere else where we're not all watching, but doing it when he knows the cameras are on him, I found that so disrespectful.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Newcastle fans and Steve Bruce and the relation between the two. It's like you said, James. You know, he is laughing, he's joking after the match, and I get it. Management is a job, and like you said, Sav, he's got friends within the football world, especially at Manchester United. But when you're in such a high-profile job, there are ways and means of conducting yourself, and there are things you can say, there's things you can do at certain times, and there are things you shouldn't. And he just crosses that line. And it's not an isolated incident. I think he's done it at previous games. I mean, just to take his comments at the most recent, after the most recent game, he just said he's got a feeling we'll be okay, with no real plan of or justification for why that is. And then he also took the opportunity to throw Carl Darlow under the bus for a relatively small error, after the guy's been arguably our player of the season in what is a stand-in goalkeeper position. The things, and that's just after the most recent game. And my point being is that the guy just seems to keep doing things and saying things that just seem so uneducated and uninspiring. And if I feel uninspired, then surely the footballers that play for him must as well.
Yeah, someone said to me, actually, because I said similar, and they said, oh, well, these are professional footballers. You know, that's their job, and they should still be playing like they're inspired. But if the person in charge, you know, who's doing the training, who's doing the press conferences, I mean, if he talks to the players like he does in the press conferences, I wouldn't be inspired, no matter if I was qualified to do that job or not. And, you know, that the match where at the end we looked like we'd been relegated, and there was players crying and all sorts, and the Lascelles looked like he was, you know, he had health problems, and it's just, why is that going on? Where is he picking up and leading the squad? He's not, for me, and it's so frustrating to see. And I can understand, I don't agree with all the people who sit around and, you know, make death threats on him, and I have seen it. I know he came out and everyone was a bit like, oh, I haven't seen loads of it, but I have seen some of it, and I don't think that's right. But I also think that, you know, he shouldn't continue to try and upset the fans all the time. I just don't think he's going to progress. I can't see this going any other way than him leaving under a dark cloud, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, exactly what you said, leaving under a dark cloud. It's really, I couldn't call it at the moment how he's going to end up leaving the club. Whether, you know, it's really hard to see how the hierarchy are going to act at any point. I mean, we discussed with Kendall, didn't we, boys? I mean, how his performance has been poor, and will the board make the same mistakes? And this was going back 7 games now, and we said, you know, they probably will make the same mistakes, and it looks to be that they will end up making the same mistake. I think I've seen time and again reports of them publicly backing him to the end of the season, and the thing that frustrates me the most is, obviously I'm frustrated with the fact that they're backing him when it's clearly not working. They hired in something like a 4th assistant manager. What club do you know has got 4 assistant managers? I think Salford had less managers than that. And they had like 2 or 3 guys actually at the helm. So I actually don't know what's going on with that. But the main thing that I take issue with is when other fans try to flip the narrative and say that Newcastle fans are not happy, are never happy, and that there's actually no problem with things going on because they used to be a big club, but this is what we should expect now. And I take that argument. You know, we're a yo-yo club essentially, based on performance. But let me ask, how many clubs do you know would spend £100 million and have a manager that's performing in 17th place with the worst football in the league, and then back him and say that that's fine? For me, it's rotten from the top to bottom.
It's strange, when you say that I don't understand how they can come out and say they back him, because typically when a manager's not performing or the team isn't picking up points and they come out and back them, it's normally because they see something, or there is something there, that you can see that if given more time, that they'll go on just to pick up more points. And it's normally they might be playing well, but they're not getting results, or the style of football is good. But with Steve Bruce, he doesn't tick any of those boxes, not one of those boxes. So the fact that they're coming out and backing him is very bizarre. And you're looking at, they've played 25 games, so 13 games left. Starting to reach that territory now, that part of the season where if they're going to make a change, they have to make a change very, very shortly, because so they drop into that relegation and they wait. What do we say, Reece? Now 6-7 games back, we were talking about this. They can't wait another 6 or 7 games. You wait another 6-7 games, and that's all you've got left. I think you're done. You really are done. But I don't understand how they can continue to back him when that Newcastle side under his management are pretty much bottom of every metric, bottom of every stat in the Premier League.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know, right? You learn a lot about a man or a woman or a genderless person, shall we say, for the course of this podcast. You learn a lot about a person, and just by the people they keep around them, right? So family and friends. And if you've got good family and friends, they'll generally bring you in line. And if you're messing up in life, they'll pull you to one side and say, look, what's going on here isn't right. I wonder who Steve Bruce has around him in his personal circle that pulls him to one side and says, Steve, this isn't really working. Because either you're surrounded by yes men, or you're surrounded by people in life that really want you to succeed. And I do look at him sometimes and I think, I wonder how much his family and friends really care about him. Because if you really care about him, you pull him to one side and you'd be like, Steve, look, this is going down a really bad road, like a really, really bad road. And he's lucky, Sav, like you said, there's no fans in there, right? Because God forbid there was fans in there. That would be an absolute bear pit. Like, I would not want to be a Newcastle player playing in that. You look at teams that could have benefited from fans, right? Somebody like a Liverpool, for example, maybe even a Sheffield United, right? If they had fans behind them, since lockdown, everything's kind of gone kaput for them. But if Newcastle had fans back now, that would be, oh my God, it would be disastrous. And again, I think that's the only way he's going to fully understand what's really going on. It's almost like he's in this little bubble that he lives in, and nobody ever pulls him to one side and gives him the real cold facts. And it's such a bizarre situation, because how would you just be so out of touch with reality? I just don't understand what world Steve Bruce lives in.
I think he's just got a lot of friends around him that he sort of gets on with. I think he's one of those guys, because until this season, I was like, he's had a season to sort of settle himself in. I was on the fence. Everyone was saying, I don't like him. And I was like, I'm not going to judge him until this season. And obviously it's gone the way that it has. But I will say his son, Alex Bruce, he's antagonised an awful lot of people, fans, calling fans haters. He blocked me, which I found really funny, because I've never actually personally insulted Steve Bruce. So I'm not really sure what that was about. He's just gone around and he's sort of blanket blocked loads of the fans. Yeah. And that's not helping Steve Bruce's plight if, his family members are going around and blocking everyone and things. And all the pundits stick up for him. I mean, Jermaine Jenas the other night was saying that, what do we expect? We should be in 17th place. We deserve to be in 17th place because our players aren't good enough. And then in the next breath, he said, but they did some great business in the transfer window and they got some great players in. So I'm like, well, they've just completely, changed what you've said there. And it is frustrating from a fan's point of view. I must admit, Jake Humphrey has been really quite supportive towards, and he's the only one of the Newcastle fans, because he does stick up for us while everyone else is trying to tear us down, tell us that we're wrong and that Steve Bruce is doing a great job. Because how can you say that after spending £100 million and still struggling in 17th and looking, in a relegation battle, that he's done a good job? I just don't see it.
The last game of the season, I'm right in thinking, is Newcastle away to Fulham. That's right.
Yeah.
So if you are allowed fans back into a ground at that point, which potentially might be allowed a few, and that is a crunch decider, I'm assuming Newcastle fans, they wouldn't be able to travel down, would they? Or would they be able to? Was it predominantly because with the games we've had, especially like in the northeast or the northwest, there was no away fans. I'm right in thinking it was just home fans. Is that right? Yeah. So for a relegation decider, if you're Newcastle, you need a result, and all of a sudden Fulham have 4,000 or 5,000 fans in there. That's a tough one. That is a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You're a bit hamstrung if it gets to that stage. I mean, firstly, we've got Sheffield United home the game before, which is a massive game, and in theory, you can put it out of out to contention by then. I think the main problem is it shouldn't get to that point, and if it has got to that point, then to blame it on the fact that you didn't have any fans, you could just say, well, you haven't had fans the last 2 years. So it really shouldn't get to that point. But Newcastle will continue to make the same mistakes, and whether they stay up or go down, I mean, if they stay up and they don't change things around, then they'll go down next year. I said this last year when everyone was still saying that Steve Bruce doing a great job. He ended up finishing 10th, I think, last season or something, something close to that. And then everyone said, what are you having a go at Bruce for? He's doing a tremendous job. I said, look, wait for it. I know that, for the moment, the points are in line where he needs to be. But look at all the stats, and eventually the stats will not lie. And they've caught up with him now, and they're terrible. They've got no discernible style of play to drag them back. And unfortunately, they're not where they are by being unlucky. They're actually where they are after being quite lucky. So it's a very concerning situation. And to bring that back a little bit full circle to what you were saying, James, about where did the board go? Do they act now? I mean, they could. There are rumours out there. I mean, that's all they are. And I'm not really taking them with a pinch of salt. But there are rumours out there about Rafa Benitez actually coming back to the club. And to make a comparison, Rafa Benitez's last game for Newcastle as Newcastle manager was a 4-0 win away to Fulham on the final game of the season when he left. So there is the levels you need to get to. And I suppose with the last 2 games being Sheffield and Fulham, with a manager like Rafa Benitez, that would help. Or any other manager for that argument. But Sav, where do you stand with those rumours, which is all they are at the moment, I guess, with Rafa coming back?
Yeah, the thing is, there's so many rumours. I'd love Rafa to come back. That would, I think that would put a bit of a high amongst a group of, very, very distressed fans that are going on at the moment. What was it that I saw the other day? It was something that they decided to stick with Steve Bruce till the end of the season because Mike Ash, it wasn't top of Mike Ash's priority list because it wasn't one of his bigger businesses. So he's not concerned with it at the moment, which I think is really bad. Why does he even own a football club? I just don't know. He just doesn't seem to pay any attention to it. He just leaves it to rack and roll, and he's left Steve Bruce in charge. He likes Steve Bruce because he's a yes man. He's not causing him any problems. Whereas Rafa would stand up and say, actually, this isn't right, which is why I didn't like him. I can't really see Rafa coming back whilst Mike Ashley's still there, surely, because they weren't on great terms, were they?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, I think there was strained relations there, but from what I can understand, I think they were okay. I think they had a mutual respect for each other, but I think they had a conflict of agreement, I suppose, a disagreement. I think the main sticking point for Rafa was not the money in his contract. I mean, they proved that by going out and then spending $3 million on Steve Bruce. But I think the main element of Rafa's frustration was the lack of intention to make progress of things like the academy structure, the facilities. I mean, if you just draw a comparison from the Sunderland and Newcastle facilities in League One and the Premier League, Sunderland have got probably a better training facility than Newcastle, which is embarrassing, really. But that's the type of thing Rafa wanted. He wanted huge investment in these areas, and Mike Ashley was just simply unwilling to do so. And with any takeover talk, then not at the time it had sort of not been on the horizon. That's why he left, and exactly what terms they left on, I imagine would have been amicable. The fact that these talks or rumours of talks have resurfaced, I suppose there's no smoke without fire. So something must have gone on. A conversation must have been had. I don't think he'll come back, but let's be honest, it would make my year if he did.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Me and Becky have spoke about this before, about ex-players and ex-managers. We always say, Sab, never go back to an ex, right? It's just not worth the hassle. So that would be an interesting take. It was still recording. Apologies. I'll edit it correctly, so it's all Hollywood done. We'll probably have a green screen with like Jessica Alba just sliding quick, and then it'll be us four again. So yeah, I have no idea what happened. Apologies, guys. I was mid-flow, and then yeah, my internet went off. We're still recording though, somehow. I don't know how that happened. All right. So before I digress, I'll go back to my story, right, Sam, because I wanted to bring it up and get your opinion on it very quickly. So, the idea Mike Ashley had was to give everybody 8-year contracts. Did you hear that story at all? Did you hear about it?
No, I haven't heard about that.
I haven't heard about it, right? It came out the other day, basically, right? So there's another podcast. It's a football podcast called Under the Cosh. So Under the Cosh podcast had the ex-Newcastle goalkeeper on. I believe I've got his name here now. It's Andy Woodman, right? So it's a Friday night. Set the scene. Andy Woodman is out with his missus. They're in a club in Newcastle. They've gone out for drinks and dinner. There's a game on a Saturday. Obviously, he's a goalkeeping coach now. It's about midnight. He should be at home getting ready for the game, but he's out with his missus, and drinks are flying round, living the dream. So anyway, he's in the nightclub. Drinks are flying round. All of a sudden, he looks up and he sees Mike Ashley come in. So Mike Ashley is with Reese. Am I saying his name right? Derek Lambias. Is that correct?
Yep, spot on.
Yep, spot on. Right. So Mike Ashley and Derek Lambias are also in that nightclub the Friday before the game. So it's about midnight. Anyway, he sees Mike Ashley and he's like, Mike, I'm going home now, because Mike is his boss. He's like, I want to come out for a few misses. And Mike Ashley's like, no, stay out. So anyway, Mike Ashley, Derek Lambias, their group, the goalkeeping coach, all end up buying loads of shots, staying out till the early hours in the morning. Now, during this point, Mike, this is great. Mike Ashley is ridiculously smashed, right? So anyway, as you do when you're smashed, you talk a lot of shit. Mike Ashley, though, for some reason, goes up to the goalkeeping coach and says, you know what? I really like you. I want to give you an 8-year contract. Now, for some reason, this goalkeeping coach was like, okay, fair enough, right, whatever, thinking he was pissed and thought nothing of it. So he went back in the next day. And he said to Alan Pardew, he's like, look, last night I got offered an 8-year contract. And he's like, I don't think I can take that. I mean, that's unheard of. A goalkeeping coach having an 8-year contract. And Alan Pardew looked at him and was like, well, we've all been offered 8-year contracts. So all the backroom staff, from Alan Pardew to the assistants, to the physios, to the goalkeeping coach, they all got given 8-year contracts, which started in 2012 and effectively would have run until 2020, right? So when you talk about poor management of a club, and you touched upon, obviously, he has other businesses that he doesn't really care about Newcastle. I don't know how this guy is in charge of a football club, because how do you give 8-year contracts to an entire backroom staff based upon a night out where you've got smashed? You could easily just turn around and go, I was at a drink last night, lads. I'm really sorry. I had got too many. Look, about that 8-year contract thing, I like you, but it's just not going to happen. He stuck to his guns and he gave them all 8-year contracts. So when Newcastle fans like Reese pour their heart out, I get it now. I understand where they're coming from, because he is in no position to run a football club. And that's my 10 cents on Mike Ashley now that I'm back. So I'll let you elaborate further. Reese, initially, what do you think of those of that story that's come out?
We all know it's ridiculous. The things he does, I mean, every time he does anything, there's a rumour that it's due to gambling debts, or it was done on a night out, or it's just because they're friends, all that kind of stuff, every time about every matter Newcastle related. I think, I made a suggestion to you guys a couple of years ago, boys, and I stick to it. I mean, Sam, you mentioned we're a business, we're run like a business, and a business he doesn't really care about. That's because he's through and through a businessman with no real passion about football at all. And I got a kind of an idea to try and counteract that. Imagine your ticket price is £30. If you just charged £30 and 10p across the course of the season for every single ticket that's sold, and the amount of money that could be generated from doing that, you could pay an elected official from the fans to sit on the board of directors at Newcastle, and they wouldn't have any financial gain from any profits that the club made. They just have a salary, but they would get a vote, and they would get at least an input into the conversation, and it would give the fans that kind of go-between between the club and the fans. Had to have an elected person earning a salary who effectively can say and do what they want, as long as it is something that has been put to them by the fans. I think it's the correct way to run a club is to have that conversation between the two, and it doesn't seem to be the case at Newcastle at all. And I think it'll always be like that under Mike Ashley.
Yeah. Sorry, what's up?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I don't think that the fans get a say because they're not interested. The communication between the club and the fans is diabolical, in my opinion. And there's just nothing. We don't know what's going on half the time. We live off of rumours and, clickbait articles online. And that's the only way we find out anything until they every now and then will put out a statement if it's needed. And I just don't think they want the fans' input because it's easier for Mike Ashley to just cover his ears from the noise and just keep running it like a business.
Yeah. What you said, Reece, is a great idea, but they don't do sensible and great ideas at Newcastle Football Club, so I'm afraid that one's out of the question.
Look, if you were to take Mike Ashley on a night out and then you say that to him, you might have a bit more luck. So someone's
that's a good idea.
Yeah, someone's, Sav, maybe you or Kendall, maybe two of you, take him on a night out, right? And just get a tray of shots and be like, Mike, by the end of this tray of shots, we're going to have everything sorted. And I guarantee
I'll bung him a message after this.
Yeah, it sounds like, right, people are trying to get through to this guy the complete wrong way. Protests, online abuse. If you just give him a bottle of vodka, right, and sat down with him, you'll probably have it all sorted by the end of the night. It's really that simple. So
we'd have 8-year contracts.
Yeah, exactly. We'll probably all be playing for Newcastle by the end of it.
Yeah. Bruce got the job. Perhaps he just met him in the kebab shop at the end of the night.
Which it doesn't surprise me. Honestly, it doesn't surprise me. I think even the way Alan Pardew got the job. Didn't he get asked in a casino to be Newcastle manager, if I read that story correctly? Did you hear about that?
Oh, I don't know, probably. I've heard so many dodgy things about Mike Ashley and his partying and
that's yeah. I mean, that's what I was looking at, Sam, as well.
That seems to be how he does his business.
Yeah, well, do you know what? He works hard and he clearly plays harder, because I heard, and again, this is just from the stories that I've seen, is that Alan Pardew was offered that job in a casino while they were all gambling. And so again, maybe I'm wrong. Obviously, there'll be other people that can verify that better than me. But Alan Pardew was like, this guy likes to go out. You know how I'm going to get employment? I'm going to take him out. The guy has been sending messages for years. Just take me out and I'll do what you want, right? So someone's going to have to take that bullet. But going back to the ownership very quickly. So I had another story as well that I wanted to touch upon. Obviously, Steve Wraith was on, and he is very convinced that a takeover is going to be happening soon. The Saudi takeover has been one, Sav, and we'll get your opinion on it in a moment, of controversy, maybe, should we say, obviously with things like human rights and misogyny and homophobia and other stuff, right? And look, there's elements of the game that are very dirty at the top. I think one of the recent podcasts I watched was another ex-Newcastle manager. Oh my God, what a shock, Sam Allardyce. And Sam Allardyce, there was a sort of issue with Ravel Morrison when he was at West Ham, where Sam Allardyce basically said to Ravel Morrison, I will continue to play you if you sign with my agent. At which point Ravel Morrison said, no, I don't want to join your agency. And, he never played for West Ham again under Sam Allardyce. So we know there's controversy at the top, and it gets magnified sort of the higher you go. And today there was news about the Saudis, which I was mentioning to the lads very quickly before we came on, that Joe Biden, good old Joey Biden, throwing a spanner in the Newcastle takeover, has released an intelligence report that concludes that the Saudi Crown Prince approved the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. So if he passes a fit and proper person's test, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions asked about that. But it looks like that spanner's in the works as well, so that's probably going to go down the drain. From a takeover standpoint, Sav, how did you feel about the whole Saudi thing? Obviously, as being a female football fan, and what some may perceive a lack of respect towards females in that sort of part of the world, was it something you were comfortable with, or would you rather have had different owners?
To be honest, I think it got to a point where I was just hoping for any form of takeover. And obviously when that when it all started, everyone got very overexcited, and we was talking about us, you know, buying Mbappe, and we was all getting delusionally happy, and, you know, living off of that. So I was sort of riding that wave a little bit, and, you know, the Saudi bit didn't really come into it. But I just want a takeover. I know it has. I understand from the Saudi point of view. I have seen them sort of trying to change things, like, and every time they change something, you know, I think it was television rights or something, then everyone gets excited again. Whether or not it's still going on, I really don't know. I know that Steve Wraith, he said to me that it's still bubbling away. He's in contact with Amanda Staveley, obviously. And he knows more than anyone else. But I've got to a point now where I can't be excited about it, and I can't think about it, because I don't really want to hope for anything, because then you never get disappointed, do you? But no, it's just always, I hope it's bubbling away. I would, you know, if it could be someone who was a bit nicer, that had the same amount of money, that would be better. But if it's got to be the Saudis, at least we can all, you know, enjoy watching us play football again.
Yeah, it's a fair show. Like Reece, you mentioned before, right, just to touch upon it, there's a lot of corruption at the top of the game, right? And whilst the Saudis are, shall we say, a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're a little more upfront about the nonsense they peddle. Like, you know, they're not exactly discreet, the Saudis. They're kind of like, look, we rule with an iron fist. Whereas maybe someone like a Roman Abramovich, right, who, again, you know, will have had to have done a lot of things to become a Russian billionaire, right? He is a little more discreet. But yeah, Reece, obviously your take on that as well, very quickly. I mean, the Saudi thing, it looks like it's in the sort of, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, if a takeover happens in the next few months, then it'll be them, won't it? I mean, there's no one else in contention for that. And I think there's a massive grey area there. First and foremost, there is a difference between the private investment fund of Saudi Arabia and the Saudi royal family. That difference could tip the way that blame lies on this supposed assassination. Now, have I got any doubt in my mind that those people are involved somehow in killings and whatever else? Yeah, I absolutely do think that they are morally corrupt people. You know, they're probably bad people. But let's be honest, most of the world's elite and rich people are. The thing that gets me is other takeovers where people are fit and proper, which is a term that I don't really think has a definition. Let's take Burnley as an example. Burnley, their fit and proper persons test didn't even last 2 weeks. Okay. I'll come back onto them in a second. Sunderland recently had takeover, fit and proper persons test, almost non-existent. The guy's 23, probably doesn't even know how to run a business, just has loads of money. In what sense is he fit and proper? But let's take Burnley, for example. They had balanced books. They didn't have a lot of money. They weren't going anywhere. They weren't making progress, but they had balanced books. A guy comes in, takes them over, passes the fit and proper persons test, and overnight they're £150 million in debt because of the debt this guy's brought with him. So I think Newcastle fans don't necessarily take issue with the fact that, you know, this Mohammed bin Salman and the private investment fund have been, you know, denied, or rather they didn't make a decision. It's the fact that the whole system stinks, and it is so blatantly corrupt. And at the moment, it's hard to see how something can be rejected, how it can be approved, because there doesn't really seem to be those strict parameters. It is just down to who you know and who you're friends with. Yeah,
it's not what you know, it's who you know, and those parameters are interesting. Look, I don't know how it's going to go. The one thing I know is speaking to Reece on a daily basis, and Sav speaking to people like yourself and Kendall. My heart does go out to you, like it does, because it's not an easy process supporting Newcastle. Me and Becky support United, so generally, like, life is cushy, you know. Like our worst problems are not that bad, in fairness, compared to everything else that's going on. But speaking of other Premier League stuff, because obviously we want to get your opinion on a few other bits and pieces as well. What have you thought of the season so far, Sav? Obviously, COVID has interrupted it quite a bit. Who's kind of impressed you from a player standpoint?
Players. God, that's a really hard one, actually. I'll tell you who I really like. Jack Grealish. Actually, Aston Villa as a whole have impressed me a lot this season. I think they did some really intelligent transfers in the window, and they've gone from staying in the Premier League by default last season to actually, even though they're not the best and they're not right up the top, but the whole style of play that they have is so much more positive than what they were playing last season. And I think, as a whole, that's the difference that you can make in a transfer window, I think. And Leeds is the same. I think that they got some quite good transfers in. So I don't know if I could pick out a player that's particularly impressed me. I don't know. That's going a bit in depth. I'd have to sit and write notes on that one.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Villa look good, and you're right. It comes down to having football people at a football club. Villa, like you said, they were sort of almost relegated. They've come back. They made a few smart signings. They look really good. West Ham now have made a few smart signings. They've kind of gone from mid-table. They're looking really good. And there's loads of clubs like that as well. Leeds on a good day, they look really good. On their worst day, they look like a pub side. But it's one of those things where it differs from team to team. But the season itself is interesting, lads. Just to touch upon, obviously, the players themselves. I wanted to actually get your opinion on it as well. We're coming up to sort of the season's 3/4 of the way through, give or take. Who has been the one player, lads, that you've actually been very impressed with, that you didn't think you'd be impressed with, if that makes sense?
There's an obvious one for me. I think he would be quite popular. It's Foden, Phil Foden.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good shout.
Obviously, he's not a new signing or anything like that, but it's this year. I know there was a few departures at City, but it's this year that Pep has really seemed to trust him with much more game time. He started a lot more games, and he scored a few brilliant goals, as well as one not too recently against City. And I'll be honest, in the past when we were speaking about Foden, I wasn't convinced on him. Obviously, he's still got a little way to go. He haven't had a good season thus far, but I wasn't convinced that he was going to be that superb, as you say, some generational talent in midfield. He thought he was, but have to kind of eat my words a little bit this season. I think he's been nothing short of superb, Foden.
Yeah. Who do you have, Reece?
Well, I mean, look, it depends how you define it, isn't it? I mean, am I surprised that Foden has been as good as he is? No, I have always backed him, and I think he will even get better. I think what you're asking there is probably the most improved player, maybe, or someone I'm surprised has done so well. I think there's an obvious candidate there, really, and that's Luke Shaw. Okay. I think Luke Shaw has been very good this season. I think he is defensively questionable at times. He's been surprisingly solid, but the guy has been pretty much at the heart of everything good that's been Manchester United this season. And when you compare that against quite shambolic displays that he's had in the past, I think, hugely improved.
Another one that I would bring up as well is Bamford as well.
Yeah, good shout.
Because us boys, we did a podcast just before the start of the season about Leeds. And I think me and you, Reece, we actually said with strikers like Bamford, I don't know how well they're going to do in the Premier League this season. And boy, has he made us eat some words, because he's just been scoring goals fairly consistently. So I give a big shout out to Bamford as well.
Random fact about Bamford: did you know his father's a billionaire architect? No. I got all the stories today, Sav.
Does he fancy buying a Premier League club anytime soon?
Well, look, I was going to say, DM him or take him out, give him a tray of shots. I don't know what he's into. Look, find out. But I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there now for Newcastle fans. Not only could you get Patrick Bamford Senior, but you could maybe get Junior as well. He might say to his son, look, come play for Daddy at Newcastle, and it'll all work out well in the end. So, that's another weird story I've seen this week amongst a few. We'll go back to Newcastle, Sam, very quickly. Obviously, talking about the best players of the season thus far. I know it's probably very difficult to pick a player of the season for Newcastle thus far. But if you were going to pick one, who would you pick?
Do you know what? I would pick, maybe, there's a couple. Darlow, I think, considering he was sort of thrown in at the deep end with Debraka getting injured, I think he put in an absolute solid performance for us. And I think it's a shame obviously last weekend he made a couple of silly mistakes, and everyone started shouting. I was one of them. I was like, "Oh, bring Debraka back." You know what it gets like when you're in the heat of the moment. But prior to that, I do think that since Debraka's been fit again, he has shown that he's under a bit of stress. But then I can imagine why, when you've got him sitting on the bench, you know, waiting to take your place, waiting for you to mess up so he can come and take back the number one. But I think, given the situation of how he had to come in and do a job, he has done a pretty solid job for us. And the other one, it's an obvious one, Callum Wilson. I mean, he's come in and he's hit the ground running, and he's a really sort of old school style footballer that we actually need, that we was crying out for. And I think he plays, you know, he can be a little bit crafty with things, but then he's got the passion there. And he can always find the back of the net, which is something that we really struggle with. I don't think we've got anyone else that can actually naturally do that. So, yeah, those two sort of stand out for me.
Yeah, I'm a big Callum Wilson fan, in fairness. When he was at Bournemouth, I appreciated him. But at Newcastle now, when I see the style of football he's had to contend with and how stifling it's been for him, I give him a few extra stripes for putting the yards in, and he has to work that little bit harder to get a chance at a team like that. So yeah, I'd be with you, Sav, on that one.
And I absolutely agree with you, Sav, in terms of the Darlow being our player of the season so far. I think up until recent weeks, like you said, I mean, he has had Dubravka pushing him, but he has been flawless up until recent weeks. And just the smallest of mistakes that he's made in games have been magnified just due to the fact that he's been unbelievable this season. So much so that when we talked about it a few weeks ago, I actually did put him in my team of the season so far across the whole of the Premier League, because I think his performances have been, you know, that good. And no keeper in the Premier, I don't think, has had to deal with as many shots as him. But just a quick question to you then, Sav. I mean, out of the whole of the Premier League, who would be your team of the season so far?
Just because they've surprised me from how far they've come. Probably West Ham, because they've shocked me from, you know, I watched that West Ham clips account. It was quite funny. And I remember at the beginning of the season, him saying, "Oh, you know, we're going to have to concentrate on finishing 17th. And now look where they are. They've just completely surpassed, you know, they're playing so well at the moment. And yeah, I would say for me, they have done, you know, really great things in the Premier League this season.
And what players would you put your 1 to 11 in terms of, you know, if you had to put a team together of players who've done well this season?
What, name an 11?
Yeah.
I wrote notes about this because I'm so airheady. I was like, I'll get there and I'll go, no, it's gone. You know, like in goal, I think Martinez has been quite solid this season. If you check the stats on that though, Edison for Man City is actually number 1. But I think he only has like 2 shots every game because their defence is so great. So I don't really think that you can stand there and say, you know, he's the greatest, because he just doesn't face the shots, and that's probably why he's at the top of the stats. I don't know how it works. That's just what I was assuming. I've got Cresswell.
Good
West
shout
Ham.
Again. They're the 2 I've had so far as well, Sav. Fair play to you. Well done. Cresswell has been superb.
Yeah, I think, as I said, with that West Ham side, I think they've been great this season. I've got Ruben Dias. Man City. Yeah. I've had to put him in because I love him and I don't care what anyone else thinks. Fabian Schär, it's been amazing. He's injured at the moment. He's a bit poorly, but he's going to get back to it soon. I couldn't leave him out because everyone would call me out on it.
Flag. It's a Swiss flag. It doesn't mean he's injured, Sam.
I wish he wasn't injured. I think we miss him at the moment. I think he had started picking up again.
Yeah. Okay.
Right back, I've got Matty Cash.
Okay, good shot.
Aston Villa again. I watch a lot of Villa. I think they play good, entertaining football.
Yeah.
Sterling.
Obviously.
You have to throw him in, but then again, obviously, I quite like, as I said, with Jack Grealish as well. But Sterling's probably the superior, you'd say, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
James Ward-Prowse.
Okay.
I think he's all right. I do watch Southampton. He's inconsistent, but he's really good on Fantasy Premier League, which is where I have him. He gets me loads of points, so he's got to be quite good. Declan Rice.
Yeah. Rice has been big for West Ham this season. Yeah.
one that not many people mention, Neto, Wolves.
My boy Neto, I said it.
He is one to watch.
Well, you two have been communicating with you.
You've got Sav, you've literally got 90% of my team so far. Like, that's ridiculous.
And strikers, only because I have him on FIFA and he is immense on FIFA. And everyone goes, you can't count FIFA, but I do. Danny Ings.
Okay, no, it's a fair show.
And Ollie Watkins.
Oliver Shotkins, yeah.
Spoon, I don't know if you've taken personal insult that Bruno Fernandes isn't in anyone's team of the season, but it's okay. It's fine.
It's nothing personal.
I think it comes down to who you watch. Like there's certain teams that I watch quite a lot, and there's some that I don't like. I don't watch Burnley at all. I couldn't tell you anything about them. And then you come on shows like this, and then people are like, right, name someone. You're like, oh God. So I had one where someone said to me, what do you think of this player? And I'd never heard of him in my life. And I just froze. And I was like, oh my God. It's like, no, I don't rate him. Never seen him, so I can't.
Well, our question was initially, Sav, Burnley's third choice left back. What do you think? we deviated from that. But no, that's a solid 11. That's a really good 11. Ironically, very similar to the 11 that I give previously as well. And shout out to my boy Neto as well at Wolves, because
he's really good. He's one that if we got a takeover, I'd want us to go after him because he's really young as well.
Yeah, he is. He's a very good player. He may even sneak into the Portugal squad as well for the Euros, which should be interesting. But I think that's pretty much everything we got for you, Sav, tonight in terms of throwing questions at you lads. Do we have anything else we wanted to go over? No, we all good? Sav, we appreciate you coming on.
Really, thank you for asking me.
No problem at all. We're always looking for guests to come on and people like yourself. You contribute so much to it. So yeah, we really appreciate it. And thank you again. To everybody that's watching, make sure you like, subscribe. We'll put Sav's Twitter handle and IG and whatnot in the description below. So make sure you go follow her up and be polite. She'll talk football with you, but you're getting blocked otherwise if anything else comes along. So yeah, we'll get everybody's ats put in the description. We will be back next week. We have Nicky Hunt, ex-Bolton Wanderers, and currently at Darlington or Doncaster, Reece.
That's right, Darlington.
Darlington. My research was correct. It's on point. But yeah, we'll be back next time, people, and we'll see you with another guest. Take care. Ciao.